to have John Otto inducted into the Hall of Fame. And it's even more of an honor. I was so thrilled to meet his daughter, who is actually here with us tonight. Could you please stand up? Thank you very much for being here. I knew her years ago when she was young and had that full head of black, thick hair, and I was young, a lot younger then too. But I'm trying to catch up with you. I knew John and his wife, Rose Otto, and this was the name sign here, and I think the mother's name, Rose, and they were a great couple. John was so active. His number one thing was in the Illinois Association for the Deaf. He was also loyal to the National Fraternal Society of the Deaf, and FSD, which is no longer functional, but those were the two things that he did so much for the deaf community. He was involved not so much as the deaf clubs, unless it was to go and socialize or, you know, he would rather work. He would much rather work than socialize. I have known him since, I would say, probably the late 1960s, until his death in 1983. He really worked for the Springfield newspaper, and he spent a lot of his free time being an advocate for deaf rights and deaf issues in the state legislature, in the Capitol. He would go often, I'm telling you, and rub shoulders with the senators and the representatives and try to brown nose and see if he could get his way so that he could get certain laws passed. One time back in the 60s, the Senate and the House were trying to pass a bill that would require a hearing test for everyone to drive, which would include deaf drivers. That would mean they would fail the hearing test, so they could not be allowed to drive. So he fought and fought and fought against that legislation and was successful. That was defeated. That bill was defeated thanks to John Otto. John Otto himself was an unsung hero. People didn't think and understand and realize how much he did behind the scenes without getting any recognition. He was involved in the Illinois Association of the Deaf, and he was the right-hand person for the president, and many of you probably remember Lonnie Warshawski. I'm sure, Lenny Warshawski, I'm sure some of you young people don't know Lenny, but all of our older generation looked up to him. And I was looking up to Lenny always, and J.B. Davis. You remember J.B. Davis, another strong leader who worked for IAD, and John happened to live in Springfield, so he didn't mind running back and forth to the Capitol, while Lenny and J.B. lived in Chicago, which was a long way from the Capitol, so they would get a hold of John and say, do this, do that for me, and John Otto never said no. He didn't know that word. He always said, yes, sure, I will do it. And he made so many friends in state government. One interesting thing, he was a very loyal frat member, and he wanted a car license to match his fraternity number, his policy number in NFSD, and his policy number was 2728. That was his policy number, 2728 at NFSD, and that number was not available, so he couldn't get it. So the next year he'd say, I want 2728. Nope, sorry, the number's already taken. So they gave him 4655. And it's still there since 1925. That's the John Otto license plate. And when he passed away, you know, he was still driving and had given that to his daughter. And sometimes I will stop at the store and I see this 4655 license and I know his daughter is in the store. I don't know where she is in there, but I'm so happy to meet you. I visited the home. He was very alert. And is it okay if I tell your age, how alert you are as his daughter? Can I tell how old you are? May I? 92. Isn't that right? I thought you, are you, not you.
I'm 92, yeah.
You, I'm telling your age. She is 92 years old. I don't mean 92 years old, I mean 92 years young. I visited her home twice. The first time we spoke, she had arthritis and wasn't able to sign as well as she'd hoped, but of course I tried my best as a lip reader to communicate, and she was so thrilled. And she shared with me some things from ISD's history that I'm now going to share with you. Check this out, 1917. Elaine, come on up. Elaine, Katie, and Maureen, come on up, both of you. Our museum curators, if you would come up. These two ladies. Oh, you need some pictures? I'll hold it up again. I want to make sure everyone's gotten the pictures. This V, I understand, is for victory. I think it was during World War I. And so, got anything older than this in your museum that you can remember? I don't think so. We don't have this either. This might be the oldest banner we have in our museum, so thank you. We're going to present it to them because they are the volunteer museum curators at ISD. So we'll present this to you from John Otto's daughter. If you would want to come up here and stand. We'd like to get some pictures here. I should introduce them. This is Elaine Katie, the curator, and Maureen Mattern, the historian. They are the two key people at the museum. And it says, I remember John Otto. I used to live in Springfield, and I still remember him working at the newspaper office there. I remember him well. I'm not done. There's more.
She said, I'm not done.
In this envelope, this is the graduation program. It's the graduation program. Look how small it is compared to the ones we have now. There were only 5 in the graduating class that year. And the teacher wrote in it and gave it to each one who was graduating. Another item I have here. This is the original. Otto was the salutatorian, and here is his speech that he gave. This is the original type salutatorian speech at graduation. Next, I have a nice little program here for graduation. Look at the small print of this small document. And all of those years, from 1917 until now, this has been preserved. His daughter kept it, preserved in a box. How wonderful. Thank you so much.
He saved it. Yeah. We're so glad.
This one is a picture of John, your father, in the school library reading the newspaper. I am telling you, he loved newspapers. Every time I was at his house, he had the Springfield newspaper, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the Chicago Tribune. He had stacks of papers. He was reading and reading and reading all the papers every day. He was so knowledgeable about politics. Here he is as a young boy reading a newspaper in the school library. You'll have to look at this, but you can see him reading this newspaper.
Well, in that picture over there.
I am just thinking, wow, this has really hit me so hard. What an impact and influence this has. Last but not least, my mother-in-law. Many of you remember my mother-in-law. She always talked about Otto. She said, oh, what a good friend Otto was. He taught her how to drive. Women didn't even drive back in the day. And he taught her how to drive because my mother-in-law was one of the very few women who could actually drive, thanks to her father teaching her to drive. But he didn't even teach his own wife to drive. What's with that? And right? I understand that your mother never did drive. But my mother-in-law did, thanks to him. And that's all the information I have, and thank you so much. Elaine and Maureen are saying, please come and visit the museum so that you can see these things that your father left for us. And thank you for donating them. Did you have something to say? Yes, okay, they will be in the museum. At first, she said, you know, I really can't go to this banquet. And I didn't want to force her. I just wanted to encourage her to come. And so I thought I'd take some pictures or some video or whatever. Then she called me last Sunday while I was in Indianapolis. And she said, my daughter's taking me. I'm coming to the Hall of Fame. So I want to thank you for bringing her as well. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming. Thank you, thank you. And I hope you're having a wonderful evening. Thank you. Oh, they were talking about the picture over here. Paul Powell, the famous
shoebox
guy who had millions of dollars sitting in shoeboxes. Yeah. You've all heard of Paul Powell. That's him right there. That's who's in the picture.
With the shoebox.
And I believe there's a plaque here to present.
Mom, you want to go up and accept the plaque?
Please? Would you be able to come forward, both of you? This plaque will be placed in Marshall Gym on the wall with all the other Hall of Fame winners. Do you want to say anything? Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you.
Just a minute, because we'll get a picture here. Hold on so some people can take pictures. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Can't thank you enough. She said she's so glad that she did come, and she remembers my father, Bobby's father, Paul Draymond. Yes, yes. And now his son has gray hair. How is that possible? Thank you for coming.